Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back once again, or for the very first time, to the Farts and Crap Show, where today, as per usual, it's your host, Anjo here, with part 48 of Tears of the Kingdom, my 4-heart run. Hope you guys are all doing well today, and on today's episode, yeah, it looks like we're all good. Yeah, on today's episode, we're going to be doing some stuff, also talking about some stuff, because I just had a realization earlier today while I was doing some unrelated to this series, just some IRL stuff, cleaning up, you know, typical, just like housework stuff. Also making more coffee right now. Because it's one of those days. Coffee. Didn't sleep great last night, but I got a lot of sleep yesterday, so still feeling okay. It's kind of how I am a lot of the times, just every other day. If I get good sleep, I'm usually alright. And yeah, I had this realization, which, by the way, I'm just gonna preface some of the gameplay here, let you guys know what we're gonna be doing. So in the last episode, before we get into story time, I mentioned going to get more fairies, and I'm pretty sure, Tulin stays here if I leave. Pretty sure. But I just loaded a hard save. So, oops, that's not the confirm button. So if I'm wrong, and he's all the way at the beginning of this freaking climb, I'm just gonna reload the save. But yeah, we're gonna go get some fairies. So yeah, I had this realization because I was thinking earlier today, because I mean, this is gonna date the video a little bit, but I feel like I kind of want to talk about it, and they're much more popular than my channel, so schwhatevs. And if you guys watch this channel, there's a good chance you watch other Let's Play stuff on YouTube, so yeah, so fairly recently, Game Grumps has been doing a playthrough of RZ, which was kind of a thing that was not like the most SEO like compatible. Like, hey, this is not the popular thing, but we're going to do it anyway, because one of the things they're known for is doing like full playthroughs of the Zelda CDI games. The CDI being the Philips CDI, which was, yeah, a CD based console kind of in the 32-bit era. I think actually it came out a little bit before the full swing of the 32-bit era, but it was around the same time. There was like the CDI, I think like Philips, no, Panasonic. Was it Panasonic that did the 3DO? It's kind of like the same thing. Of course, the big hitters were, PlayStation and Sega for the 32-bit consoles, with the PlayStation and the Saturn, respectively. Yeah, so RZ is kind of like a love letter to those Philips CDI games, the Zelda ones. The Wand of Gamelon and what was the other one? Faces of Evil or something like that. And the amount of homage they pay to those games is incredible in that game. Like, it looks like a game that could be natively for the CDI. Although I think it's on most modern platforms. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, that's so cool that they made a game like RZ. Because I doubt Nintendo is ever going to port the Zelda CDI games to modern platforms. So I'm glad some company, took the reins and was like, all right, we're going to do this. Because this is a thing that people obviously want. And that can work out super well sometimes. I think the most recent success story of that kind of thing was .emu and Guard Crush Games making I think Lizard Cube might have been part of that one. Guard Crush was I believe, the large majority of the development for Streets of Rage 4, because I don't think before that was announced anybody was expecting a new Streets of Rage game, especially one that was like so faithfully recreated what was fun and amazing about the originals, but modernized it in like the perfect way. And yeah, like Streets of Rage 4 is incredible. Like if you like side-scrolling beat 'em ups, it's one of the best ever. Like bar none. Like, and there's a lot of good ones out there. Like Dragon's Crown is a fantastic one from Vanillaware. The classic like Turtles 4 and the Hyperstone Heist on this Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive, respectively. Like Golden Axe, obviously. Like there's a lot of really good ones, like classics that are hard to beat. And I feel like Streets of Rage 4 kind of like is a successor to those games because most of them are from the 90s. Like modern developers haven't really tried, and maybe some have tried, but they haven't really recaptured that same magic, that same like lightning in a bottle kind of a thing. So yeah, they recently finished the RZ playthrough, so I was just kind of reflecting, and I was like, we all kind of just like accept that the CDI games happened, But it seems weird, right? Like, why? Because those are official Zelda games. Like, they're not bootlegs or knockoffs. They're Zelda. Like, just as much as this is officially a Zelda game, like, they are official Zelda games. Licensed by Nintendo. And, one of the few that was, like, back in the day, not on a Nintendo platform. And I was like, wait, it was Philips. Philips made the CDI. So, I'm trying to remember where we can get some fairies. Oh, right here would work. Yeah, that's why I was looking southwest. Keep looking at whatever's going on with Zelda and Blizzard while you're away. I will. Please be right here. So yeah, it was Philips, which apparently is like Dutch based, like, and they're a conglomerate, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I was like, didn't know that. So I was just like researching a few random things about the whole like situation, but the realization I had was because, and this is the coolest part of the game, was in relation to them breaking off their deal with Sony, because like as early as like I think 1988, like they were in plans with Sony and like worked with Ken Kutaragi, who later was like, you know, I believe president and CEO, like main dude at Sony. But at the time he was just like an employee, and he almost got fired, but because he worked successfully with Nintendo in negotiations and licensed, apparently got some deal with them when he wasn't supposed to, but nonetheless got a deal. And again, I'm going off of memory, so some of these details may be a little bit off, but he got the licensing contract or whatever, the deal with Nintendo to produce the sound chip for the Super Nintendo, which, yeah, I guess like this was 1988, I think, so like kind of right when it's that cold, really? Freaking all right. Yeah, like as the Super Nintendo was like being developed and getting closer to release. So anyway, the then president of Sony, I forget the guy's name, but it was one I didn't remember, like at all. I was like, huh. It's funny, you say Ken Kutaragi and most people like who are familiar with like technology and stuff know it's like, oh, the father of the PlayStation. Yeah, 100%. Like the man. I guess I don't have to climb all the way up here. I've never done that before. I've never done this way where I have plenty. Did the other... I didn't scare away the other fairies. Oh, did the birds? Did the ducks scare away them? Wait, there should have been 3. I thought I saw more than one. Fuck, do I have to go somewhere else? No. Anyway, so instead of getting fired, Kutaragi was made a protege of the president of Sony at the time. And because like, you know, did good work, landed a good deal, you know. So they were in talks with Nintendo like afterwards, because like Nintendo was impressed with like the sound chip, I guess, and you know their dealings and such, to develop the CD based add-on for the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom. And I can't believe I have to hit up a different Sky Island to do this. Oh, there's one right there. Yeah, I can do it from here. Crap. Why do I keep doing that? Okay. This one? Yeah, it's pretty close. So, yeah, the big stinkum was 1991 CES, and I think it was before E3. I don't think E3 was a thing yet, but Consumer Electronics Show, I believe, is what CES stands for. It's been around for ages. It's still a thing, but I think it's, yeah, I believe it's that island right there. Just gonna do glide suit real quick. Anyway, because Nintendo apparently had already decided, like internally, to not work with Sony. And they didn't inform Sony at all. So like Sony went into CES, like I guess, according to, some sources and stuff, they went into CES without, okay, that guy's gonna be shooting rocket arrows and he might scare away the fairies. So I need to take him out and then grab the fairies. They went into CS thinking that everything was good to go. Sony did. And then like, oh shit, that's right. Nintendo announced, like let them know later that they were instead going to be working with Philips. So they basically got snubbed, like big time. So like Sony was like scrambling pretty much, and they were still kind of like trying to get their foot in the door sort of for like the home console kind of thing. And so they contacted a couple of different companies to be like, yo, you guys want to maybe work on like a CD add-on stuff? Like we have, and they had like a pretty extensive like research and development department. So like, because even at the time, like Sony was huge, and just gonna do the glide in method. But yeah, one of the things I found really interesting about that whole thing is apparently Sony actually contacted Sega. And it went like, I guess, all the way to like the proposal phase. And Sega apparently turned down Sony with, I guess, like, and this part of it was like, it's just like Wikipedia or whatever, but I think I've heard it from other sources as well. Apparently it was like Kalinsky who said like, who was like quoted, I guess, saying like, it's Sony. They don't know about consoles or making software. Like, why would we want to work with them? Is like, dude. At the time, sure. Sure. Like, they're not a Capcom. They're not Namco. They're not Konami. Like, Sony Computer Entertainment or whatever, like... Oh, why did you not do the thing earlier? I hit the thing. I guess I didn't, like, tap it enough. I tapped it too late. Like, I don't know. Anyway, it's my first recording of the day, guys. give me a fucking... Give me a second, alright? But yeah, in the 32-bit era, which, I mean, I guess Sega was mostly focused at the time on, like, competing with Nintendo on the hardware front for home consoles. And they, were gonna do the whole add-on thing, and they both had, like, I guess multiple add-ons, like, planned and stuff, which makes sense, because, I mean, I think the only main one that they did for Super Nintendo was the Satellaview. And I guess, plans changed and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, they were essentially going to have a Nintendo CD, like a SNES CD, like the Sega CD. And like they both had like their additional chips thing, which I get why they kind of stopped doing that because it was expensive. And they had to increase the price of the games that used it and shit. Like, because Nintendo's Super Effects chip it was good, it was fine. Sega's I forget the name of it, but the one they used for not Virtua On, not Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racing. Man, they really got a lot of mileage out of the Virtua moniker, I guess, because they later did like other games like Virtua Tennis, and I guess it was before like the Sega Sports era, but you know, at the time, 16-bit, 32-bit era, and even going into Dreamcast, actually, it was all Virtua stuff. And like, yeah, Virtua On too, with like the mecha things. I think the other one left. I only grabbed two, right? Sorry, I'm just very distracted telling the story. So Sony was snubbed in favor of Philips, and it's kind of been this long running, wow, that's pretty, tradition for like Japanese companies where you don't do that. Like, you don't snub a fellow Japanese company in favor of a foreign one. Like, that's been, there was actually another episode that we did a while ago. I can't remember if that's been came out yet or something. But anyway, we talked about that in relation to, I forget in what context it was. Anyway, it was the reason they had decided to not go with Sony is because Sony wanted like full, essentially royalties, like residuals on, what was it, like the CD technology or something. Like Sony would have, or Nintendo would have had to pay Sony for every CD game for like the Nintendo CD, basically. And I think this was even before like CD was a thing. Like compact disc wasn't. I don't think it was a format yet, so they probably just called it like an optical disc drive. I don't know. But anyway, how many do we have? Okay, we're at 5. Okay. That's plenty. Okay, so it was really cold up there, so I'm just gonna wear the helmet, right? That's what I was wearing. I mean, I could also wear the pants just to have like a lot more defense and then keep the fire weapon on. So anyway, what was the one I was using? This one? Just a sec. This one. Oh yeah, I grabbed this too. And this. Yeah, I was holding on to a few, not fusing them yet because I was waiting for other stuff. Okay, cool. That's not the right button. Man, it occasionally is a little confusing swapping between these games using essentially the same controller, um, but having different layouts depending on if I'm playing on, you know, PlayStation or Nintendo. Oddly apt and relevant to this story. So let's get back there real quick. What was, I think it was this one? I think so. So yeah, apparently Nintendo wasn't, somebody in Nintendo was not happy with the deal. Which is why, yeah, Toolin's here. Hell yeah, Toolin! Anyway, Link, you're back. Come on, we got more investigating. I know. This is the right spot, right? Shit, did I go to the wrong one? Did I go to the wrong one? I may have gone to the wrong one. This doesn't look right. That's, again, the wrong button. Oh, right, the second one was done. Because I just went in and it was, yeah, just Robber's Blessing. Now, is Tulin gonna be there? Or is he... do I have to redo that part because I went back to the wrong location? If so, like, it's not a huge deal. Fuck. Oh, there he is. Okay, we're good. Okay. Whew. Alright, yeah, this is definitely the right spot. I remember the boat being right next to the platform. Okay, so... Alright, I know this part, so I can just go on autopilot for this. Focus on the story. So, where was I? So Sony was being snubbed, not only initially by Nintendo, but then again by Sega, which, honestly, Sega probably kicked themselves. Like, during the Saturn generation, they're like, fuck, why didn't we just work with Sony? And man, if we could have, like, if they could have worked together, because there was some crossover back in the day between Sony and Sega, like, before it was actually Sony and Sega. Like, here's a fun little tidbit for you guys. Sega of America, right, made Sonic 2, that's well known. Guess who is prominently in the credits of Sonic 2? Mark Cerny. Yeah. The architect of the PS4 and the PS5? Yeah, that Mark Cerny. Yeah. Interesting little side note, huh? Anyway, yeah, another one this one's more well known, but Steve Jobs he worked on is one of the main guys who worked on Breakout for the Atari back in the day. Yep, and apparently he and Nolan Bushnell didn't get along too well, but anyways, that is a big old jump. So, yeah, Sony was getting snubbed, and apparently stuff with, like, Philips kind of fell through on the add-on device. As far as the Nintendo side of things, I didn't really look into that too much. But yeah, Philips never made... that never came to be. Like, they never did... Sorry, it's kind of loud here. I don't know if I can catch up to that. Yeah, I think I have to hit this one. It's just a series of moving platforms, basically. So... yeah, we'll handily make this, no problem. Why does it have to be so loud here? Okay. I was hoping it would be quieter on the way up. So anyway, whatever plans fell through, yeah, Nintendo didn't get that CD add-on. They had the Satellaview, like, I think maybe they did that instead or something. I don't know. So they didn't have to add essentially a new media format to the Super Nintendo. I mean, you know, later they tried that with the 64DD, and we all saw how that worked out, you know. But turns out people don't like multiple types of physical media on one device. Go figure. I mean, especially at the time when, you know, read and write speeds and bandwidth, and anyway, it was a very different time. So what was the other point? So when it gets done, the Philips CD add-on never came to fruition, and for whatever reason, in most parts of the world, the Super Nintendo was just a one cartridge machine that didn't. And honestly, I think it worked out for the best, because like, as much as I love the Sega Genesis, having all of the things to play all the Sega stuff from that generation, it got very expensive and kind of complicated. Because, like, they call it, you know, the Tower of Power or whatever. It's like, I mean, you don't need the Game Genie and the lock-on and, you know, blah, 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 or Sega Channel. But even just to be able to play all the games that were physically released, like, yeah, you need the Sega CD and the 32X. And, it got complicated and expensive, like I said. So I think Nintendo went with the right route for what they did with the Super Nintendo, and then like focus on software. Like that ended up working out for them, and you know, over the years it's been a bit of a bumpy ride, but that's still their strategy today, is focus on software. Don't really worry about competing in the hardware. Like Space, that's, dude, like, what am I playing right now? It's a game that doesn't need very powerful hardware to run, but it's a modern game that competes with the best of them. So it's like, sorry, I'll wrap up the point here because I do need to get through this, and I'm having to pick between one or the other just because of, like, actually, where's the volume here? That's not that bad. I can, it's like the jump, the storm is kind of loud. Alright, I'm pretty sure this is the last one, so I'll just pause here. So oh yeah, so we almost got a Sega and Sony PlayStation, which apparently this was another tidbit I didn't know about at all until I started looking into this today because of like the other realization I had. But PlayStation apparently was a name owned by Yamaha, who, by the way, was also kind of involved in the console space because one of the main, even at the time, because one of the main sound chips in the Mega Drive / Genesis was produced by Yamaha. There you So anyway, Sony bought the name from Yamaha so they could use it for their upcoming console, which thank goodness they did, because they just wanted to call it PlayStation. Like, is anybody using PlayStation? Call around, find out. Like, we have to call it PlayStation. Yeah, that was the right move, because a good name goes a long way. Like, and I have to say, I think Sega did have the best names for their consoles, like Genesis, Saturn, Dreamcast. Fucking killer. All three of those. Like, I'm a little sad we never got the Sega Neptune, but whatever. Anyway. Sorry, this heavy sigh for Sega. Pour one out for Sega. Actually, don't. Like, if it's not gonna make a mess, and it's not like a waste of food or drink or whatever, like, you know, various traditions aside, but I mean, sometimes you have to pour stuff out, so next time you have to pour something out, I guess just think of Sega for a second. So yeah. Anyway, Sony went on for... So on the Sony side, Sony went on to have wild success. Absolutely dominated the 32-bit generation. Went on to dominate with the successor, PlayStation 2. And, you know, the rest is history. That fairly recent history, so, you know, whatever. Sega, obviously, struggled to compete, especially with Sony coming in a big way. Then all of a sudden, they are the main competitor to Nintendo, which nowadays, not as much. And it, you know, Xbox and Microsoft kind of shook things up when they threw their hat in the ring for the first Xbox, right? So yeah, Sega fell off, and Microsoft may or may not have had a hand in that, but you know, that's a different thing for a different time. Anyway, things didn't work out for Sega, obviously. Things did work out for Nintendo. And but I mean, they struggled during those generations. Like, they didn't have a 32-bit console. The N64 kind of struggled, you know, commercially, as did the GameCube. But Nintendo, like, their strategy was working. They doubled down on software, and it was critically acclaimed. Like, sometimes the best entries in the industry. And so certain developers and stuff wanted their projects on Nintendo platforms, like, still. But Sony was like coming in a big way, so they obviously got some of the big names over on their device for the PS1. Like, I mean, Capcom, they had like Resident Evil, they had, you know, Mega Man 8 and Mega Man X4. Like Konami, they had Castlevania, Symphony of the Night. They had Namco with the Tales of series just starting. And Need for Speed, I think, is Namco as well. And like the Ace Combat series that was just starting. And like, they had a lot of studios that wanted to develop for PlayStation. Like Naughty Dog was just starting up, like Santa Monica Studios. It was a big deal in a big way. And Nintendo had their own projects, which were phenomenal. Like, but people seem to like to want to develop for Sony, partially because of how, especially with the Net and Rose thing, how they had the black PS1s that were like basically dev kits. That the whole story of the Net and Rose is fucking awesome. And actually, one of my favorite studios, Shift, the creators of God Eater and Code Vein and stuff, they actually were one of those Net Neurose developers that got their start because of that. It's just fucking awesome. And so Nintendo didn't get their 32-bit add-on, their CD add-on, and Philips made the CDI, their own console, which I think they kind of had probably the same idea. This is purely speculation, but they probably had the same idea, just like, oh, we should get in the console space too. Like, this is a booming market. And like, oh, and NEC, right, with the what they call it in Japan. Anyway, the Turbo Graphics and PC Engine. There we go. And like, oh yeah, Sharp had their hat in the ring for a bit too, and Panasonic, right? Yeah, I think Panasonic was the 3DO, but anyway, they knew they were the new guys and not the the dominant name in the industry, right? So with Nintendo all of a sudden not really having a hardware partner for an add-on, and with them doing their thing and everything, that must have dissolved in it's hard to say when that was. I mean, like I said, the change, the big hullabaloo, the big snuffing, like it was 1991 CES, like I said before. So it was probably like that following year, like 91, 92, maybe even 93, where like things changed. I don't know when the CDI came out. It was probably, yeah, it was early 90s, I know that. So it's probably 93 or 92. But they must have had some residual deal with Nintendo, and Nintendo was probably experimenting and playing with the idea of like, oh, maybe we should license some of our games to other platforms. So they probably had that deal in place already, like when Philips was going to be making the CD add-on. And they probably didn't want to like start making a reputation for snubbing other, companies with the deals and stuff. Again, speculation. But, and I'm talking about stuff that happened like 35 years ago almost. So, yeah. So yeah. So two's, or was it three? But yeah, a couple games, Zelda games on a Philips console. And yeah, I just had that idea like earlier today. I was like, wait a minute. Did those Zelda CDI games happen because it was the Philips CDI and they were the ones who were going to be making the CD add-on for the Super Nintendo? Like, that's got to be fucking it, because it was going to be Sony and then it wasn't. Oh. Oh, okay. All right. And it just made sense. I was like, huh. So that's probably why also like Nintendo doesn't like putting their games on other platforms, because of like those early experiments of licensing things out, like their Golden Boy IPs out to other, because there's that other one, what was it? I can't remember who developed it, but games like Mario is Missing and like some of the other, they had other games where think it was like Donkey Kong Math or something like that. They had some edutainment games that were kind of terrible, to be honest. Yeah, this is CDR game. So after that, they probably were just like, no, we're gonna do our own we're gonna do our own software and work with the partners, obviously. You know, blah blah blah. But I mean, I'm glad they have like other, because like I said before, and I forgot to look into this, but I'm pretty sure it is Monolith that helped develop Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. So I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did that. Like, Nintendo seems to be better off nowadays because they have like their second party developers, which wasn't even really a term. Maybe it was. I wasn't aware of it like 15, 20 years ago. I don't think it was a term. Like either it was internal, like internally developed first party, or it was third party. Like second party developed games wasn't, I mean, development teams were also already like smaller and stuff at the time. So it was that was probably the reason why it wasn't really a term yet, is because it wasn't really necessary, you know? Like A Link to the Past was developed by like 10 people. So and then you had like other developers that another one that kind of sad about occasionally when I think about it is Treasure. Treasure was one of my favorite developers, and actually I still need to play what is it, the other one that people really like. I think it was made by the Mischief Makers on the N64. I think that's another Treasure game. But yeah, they used to be Konami employees, if that sounds familiar. And they ended up going and making their own studio. And they made, I think it was their first project for Sega, and they made Gunstar Heroes, which is still one of my favorite retro games of all time. Game fucking rules. Like, the pixel art was great, the music is incredible, gameplay, like, one of the best times, like, co-op. Like, a quick way I usually explain it to people that haven't played it is like, it's like the best non-Contra game. Like, if you know of Contra, it's like that, but it's not Contra. And it's a Mega Drive, like Genesis. It's a Genesis game. Is it too cold to? Yes, it is. Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm probably just gonna keep this equipped and use like bows and stuff, because like otherwise I'm not gonna have a lot of defense. I did increase the Snowquill tunic like a little bit, but if you guys remember, for the other upgrade I'd have to get like Warm Saflina, so I'm not gonna do that right now because I haven't even come across Warm Saflina yet. I'm pretty sure I'd have to go to the Gerudo region, which I haven't even really touched that area yet, except for the Highlands for like that one Lionel and the tower. That's pretty much it. Oh, 2 Lionels, actually. Never mind. Because there was the one in the Highlands right there, and there was the one on the east side. I don't have it marked on the map anymore. Yeah, when I first got to this shrine, and then it was Stalry Plateau doesn't sound right. I think it was Taobao grassland. It might have been this area in between the two, actually. I don't... Yeah, it wasn't a grassland, I don't think. I think it was part of the desert plateaus, because these are some pretty sheer cliffs right here. I don't remember it being in the lower part. I think it was in the higher part here. Yeah, I think so, because I stopped by, got the Korok before going to the shrine, because I was like, I need a fast travel point. I didn't have the map yet. Okay. Right. Anyway, for those two Lionels, because this is kind of still... Gerudo region-ish. I don't know. I guess it's up for debate if, like, the area is, like, east and, like, northeast of Gerudo, like, canyon. I mean, this whole thing is the canyon. So, I don't know. On the east side, like, the areas that surround before you go into Farron, it's, like, not... Like, Gerudo's over here, Farron's over here, so what do you call... I mean, these are Farron grasslands. So... And these all have unique names. I mean, this is the East Gerudo Mesa, but that's like up here. So this Farron West Farron / East Gerudo place, I guess. That's a weird little turnaround spot right there. Just geographically, I bet there's something special there. Anyways, oh, because the deals that fell through. Right. Treasure made some awesome shit, right. And then Nintendo and stuff and blah blah blah. With Nintendo didn't get their thing with the Philips CDI, and so maybe they already had the deal. Okay, so I wrapped up the story. Okay, cool. I was just trying to think. And of course, the CDI went on to be an immense failure. But it was Philips. You know, they were a giant company. They could take the L and still be kind of okay. They used to be one of the most prominent. Like they were a direct competitor to Sony in the 80s and 90s. Nowadays, not as much. Like nowadays, people will see Philips and they're like, "Oh wow, I remember them. That was like, man, back in the day, they used to make all kinds of stuff that was like really popular. Whatever happened to that?" You know. So anyway, it was an interesting turn of events, basically. And I don't know. I'm sure. I mean, there's probably like a gaming historian episode on it. Like, I love that channel. They're so fucking good. But yeah, I'd be curious about that. And the other one, like, I don't, because granted, some of that stuff I already knew like offhand, which is why I was saying like I'm just going off of memory while I do this, because yeah, some of the stuff I was like, oh yeah, you know, with the blah 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 blah, because I love that kind of like tech history shit. It's awesome. But one that's I don't really know much of anything about is like, yeah, the 3DO. Like what? That seemed like a thing just like straight out of left field. Like why did they think that was a good idea? Like why? Because I doubt it was just randomly like, hey, let's make a console. I was like, nope, didn't do well. All right, let's pull out of the console game. I doubt that was it. Like a lot of those seemingly like out of left field things, it was very, at the time, even like the smartest people were just like, yeah, this is a great idea, let's do this. Like it was very calculated, it was very thought through, it, like every angle. Nowadays, hindsight's 2020, right? Nowadays it's so easy to say like, oh, obviously that was gonna fail, you know, blah blah blah. I was like, no, if you were there at the time, you might have made the exact same decision. Like, and like anytime there's a booming market like that, there's typically room for like other groups, entities, whatever, individuals or groups, I guess, which, you know, entities kind of covers that better, to kind of like, you know, use their know-how and be like, hey, this is a thing that we're proficient at, we should do this, you know. So, oh my goodness, I need to take another aspirin. My shoulder is not happy with me. Oh, and I need to get going, so let's wrap up this episode. I thought this would be automatic. It's not? Was it back here? I kind of thought like as soon as we touched down... What is with that one island that's like... I mean, there's that one too, but that one's kind of far away. Oh shit, kind of far away is an understatement. I don't even see... Dude, that's the Great Sky Island? Yeah, it's huge. It really is huge. That's another thing, like they designed... Some people were skeptical. A lot of people were skeptical about this game before it came out. Because people are just like, oh, it's going to be the same map as Breath of the Wild. Boring. And like, it's based on the same map, but dude, this is the same template. This is new, and this is new. Like, it's 1/3 the same template from Breath of the Wild. Like, it's, yeah. Yeah. But the sense of scale, like when you first get to this big ass island and then you see like all these other islands around you, just to like visually, like they use the hardware to their advantage, and like they know the limits of like the draw distance, but also the intrigue that you can generate just by putting a large shadow in the distance. And granted, like it's a little disappointing later because none of the other islands are this big. It is far and away, like, I mean, the Zora's Domain one, you can tell it's pretty sizable. And like there's not a lot above the Gerudo region, and there's this, whatever that is, but whatever that is kind of similar to whatever this is. Like, it's obscured in the same way, so it's supposed to be like a visual hint in a sense. But yeah, and granted, I don't have the map for the Northeast, but I'll just tell you right now, there's some islands, and none of them are as large as the Great Sky Island, because the Great Sky Island is the largest island. So, and yes, this, you can already tell, like, we've been around here a bit. Yes, a large chunk is obscured by this cloud, but I've been hopping around here a lot. If there was like a giant island, you probably would have seen it. Like, there's a giant boat shadow thing that we saw, and it's pretty big, not gonna lie. It's, like I said, it's only slightly disappointing. It's in the sense of scale of like once you get out to the world, but then you also go to the depths and you're like, oh shit, it's a whole nother map. And the depths are kind of brilliant in the sense that you can't uncover a large swath at a time. It's like light route by light route, and it feels kind of like the hard mode of the game in a way, but it's just as large as the surface map, which is really cool. You just have 3 layers all the time. Just fucking sick. But anyway, that's and I think if you combine all 3 maps, I think it might be the largest game on the Switch as far as like area goes. And like complexity, right? Because the complexity of the map and the surface area, like it's kind of like a ratio. You can have a giant area, because like I don't remember when it's coming, but like Ace Combat 7 is coming to the Switch, which I don't have any kind of expectations that it's going to be a good port, because that seems like an impossible port. That game has some very large maps that are actually richly detailed. Surprisingly detailed for how freaking fast you can travel the maps. As far as like sheer scale goes, that would be the largest one. Easily. Like Red Dead Redemption, big map. But if we're talking about size, yeah, I would have to, yeah. And again, it's kind of an unfair comparison. Kinda. But again, that's Namco. Namco fucking rules. Like, dude. Anyway, it's two samurais. I'm curious where that is. Oh yeah, there's one too. I think that's just a light though. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else up there. There definitely seems like something. So there's probably a few more of those just like on the outskirts here that would probably get the map info for like once the cloud clears. It's also hard to tell how far away it is. Again, sense of scale that works really well in this game. But I think some of the same guys that worked on, and I don't know, this is speculation, that's why I said I think some of the same people who worked on, and I meant guys in the gender neutral, like generic people slang, if you will. I think some of the same people who worked on Xenoblade Chronicles X, I think is what it was called, the Wii U game that people were like very impressed with for the scale of like the map and everything. Pretty sure some of those same developers worked on this and Breath of the Wild, so pretty sure. Not positive, but I think I heard that somewhere. Anyhow, my point is, in my opinion, Tears of the Kingdom, I had my doubts about this game. Like, how are you going to follow up on Breath of the Wild? After playing it, all doubts vanished. Like, this is, in my opinion, again, a worthy successor to, and it's hard to follow a game that's like a 10 out of 10, and Breath of the Wild 100% is a 10 out of 10 kind of game. And like some people may have been disappointed because they're like, oh, it's a lot of the same. But some people, that's exactly what they wanted. Was more of the same, because the same in this situation was a fantastic game. So, and it's not like they reused anything else. Like some of the armor set, yeah, a lot of the armor sets came back, but there's also a lot of new ones. And the map, yeah, it's the same it's the same area, but it's later. And almost everything is different. There's a few things that are in the same spots, obviously, because it's part of the topography of Hyrule in the universe of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. But like, yeah, you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna go here and do this, I'm gonna go here and do this. No, stuff is not in the same places. Stuff is not the same situation at all. At all. Like, it feels familiar in the best way, in my opinion. So, anyway, thank you all for being here, guys. Greatly appreciate it. I really need to get going because this was meant to be an episode that ended 20 minutes ago. But yeah, that is a little, I wouldn't say history lesson, because again, there was a lot of speculation there and me going off of memory, but a recounting as a bit of a retrospective speculative is that a term? Whatever. A little speculative retrospective. That seems redundant. Anyway, on the Nintendo CD, I guess. Super Nintendo CD. I'm not sure what it was actually supposed to. Super Nintendo CD. Put OCD at the end of it. Man, that's not what they would have called it in America. At least not if it came out, nowadays. Back then, maybe. SNES-CD seems likely for North American branding. And yeah, just kind of a different take on like the whole like Sony Philips Nintendo thing. And yeah, some of those other things that I learned today about that upon researching is just interesting stuff. Like, we almost got a Sega Sony like 32-bit device. Like, yeah, the worst part about the PS1 and the Saturn is that they're separate consoles. Like, dude, if they would have combined their knowledge, oh my goodness. You think the PS1 dominated? Oh, dude, the Sega PlayStation would have destroyed. Like, I mean, I'm glad in a way that they didn't. No, I'm not. Pour one out for Sega. I'm really not. Anyway, thanks for being here, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Any of the stuff I talked about, or like your take on that stuff. Do you guys actually remember that time period? Was it before your time? Was it something you've researched? Was it did your dad work at Nintendo? Was he directly offended? Was he directly affected by the falling out with Sony, or the kind of botched deal with Philips for the CD add-on? Let me know in the comments. But before we get going, a very special thank you going out to the Farts and Crap Show members, which at the time of recording is Novelis Draconis, Don and Sabino, WTF Corey, who gifted some of these, by the way. Thank you very much for that. Also, Big Diarrhea Dump, Dan Acton, JSpot51, Autumn Mayfield, Sweet Gaming, and Aaron Schick. Thank you all so much for choosing to support the show more directly via channel membership. It makes a big freaking difference. And because we recently hit that milestone of 10 members, this next Retro Classic series that is coming up soon, sometime in early May, is going to be ad-free, at least for the duration of its original run. Like after the series is over, like we'll see. Probably, hopefully not, but you know. And yeah. Also, believe this is coming out in late April. So the current members' choice poll, which should be active right now if I'm remembering the schedule correctly, because I think this episode is coming out the 28th-ish, 27th, maybe. Can't remember if the Tears of the Kingdom episodes are on the odd days or the even days. But I believe this is coming out late April. So if you guys hurry up, you can still go over to the membership tab and vote on the current members' choice polls. And if you're a new member, you can vote on any of the members' choice polls you've missed. That input will be considered. That retroactive, there we go, input will be considered for future members' choice polls. So if you see something on a previous poll you really like, yeah, vote on it. It might come back in a future one. So maybe next month. I don't know. We're also going to have a bonus members' choice poll in sometime coming up soon. It's going to be stream related. So I'm going to try out a few things for live streams, and I need to narrow them down. So, and personally, between the like 4 different ideas I'm going to do, I don't have a preference. So I'll leave it up to the channel members. I mean, I do have a preference, obviously, but you know. Anyway. Yeah, but if you want to stay up to date on all the announcements here on the channel, check out the community tab here on the channel. You can try the bell if you want. I know it doesn't work for a lot of people. If you want to follow the Twitter or join the Discord, I always post on all three whenever there's a new announcement. Over on the Twitter, the pinned tweet is usually the most recent announcement. Over on the Discord, it's the channel updates channel. So links are down there in the description for that, also on the channel banner. But that's going to do it for today, guys. Thanks for being here. Till next time, take care, and I hope you all have a magnificent day.